Welcome back, everyone. Today, let's draw a tree, but a tree more, we're going to draw the focus on the trunk of the tree. And one of the first things you want to do with drawing trees is to not keep your branches and trunk straight. Not only will you make a more interesting looking tree, but if you observe trees out in nature, they hardly ever, and yet there's such an impulse when we draw trees to more or less give them straight lines. But they go off in all kinds of different directions. And we're focusing mostly today on the trunk of the tree. We will do another tree where we draw the whole tree. Let's have a branch coming out here as if it's broken off. And then we're going to put in some, let's put the foliage in. So most of the foliage is going to be off the paper, because we are going to do some foliage, as you can see. And trying not to draw just puffy. They go in all kinds of different directions, just like the branches. It's going to make for a more believable tree. So this tree goes way off the picture plane. And here's some roots of this tree. And they can go any which direction. There's some this particular case, this tree is on a bluff. And right around this branch is a tire swing. And we'll just kind of fill this in. Let me do the bark first. So the foliage usually will cast some shadows, and they tend to be curved because the branches are curved. And then for the bark of the tree, kind of keep it in the same direction, but loosely. Just some short stabby marks. This will give you that texture of a bark of the tree. I think trees are just one of the most beautiful things in creation. In fact, I'm back here. I'm going to read to you a little poem. I think that I shall never see a poem lovely as a tree whose hungry mouth is pressed against the earth's sweet flowing breast, a tree that looks at God all day and lifts her leafy arms to pray. A tree that may in summer wear a nest of robins in her hair, a pond whose bosom snow is lain, who intimately lives with rain. Poems are made by fools like me, but only God can make a tree. I love that poem. There is a million ways to make trees. If you want to design your own tree, feel free to go to Google and just put in trees, drawing trees. Remember when you got these kind of rock formations, to vary your values, it's just going to give it more sense of, well, rocky, unless you want it. So when you get to the foliage here, when you get to the watercolor, this is what I recommend for the watercolor one. Just wet this area with just plain, clean water, and then come in with your brush, whatever color you want. It can be orange, green, yellow, red, it doesn't matter, and start laying your watercolor. The paint from the watercolor will spread, and it'll only go so far as the wet area. You can mix your colors, so you can put in some red and then put in some yellow. Of course, that's going to mix together and make orange. So you can experiment with it. So that's what I recommend you do with the foliage, and it'll be uneven and it'll look very convincing. But for the drawing, what I'm going to do is just tight little squiggly lines. And again, you want it to be kind of uneven. You could put these squiggly lines in first before you do the outline, but most people seem to prefer the outline. I also tend to make it a little darker towards the bottom of the foliage, because even though you've got a million leaves here, you still deal with form shadows. Things away, so if my light's coming in this direction, things away from the light are going to be more in shadow. And if the light is above, you can use this method and then come in with your watercolor. That works too. It's called mixed media. You use more than one kind of media, is whatever art supplies you're using. So watercolor is one, pencil is another, color pencils is another, paint is one. So when you mix media, your artwork has a combination of those. It might have some watercolor, it might have some colored pencil. We are fortunate in our city. We have a lot of trees. Last I heard, we have the most trees of any urban area in the world. could use cross-hatching for this foliage. It might go a little quicker. It will have its own look about it. But if you really want to kind of replicate the texture of foliage, I think this is what you got to do. And we want to put some shadows. So in this case, I don't want it to be a block. I want it to have kind of that dappled look to it. Just a little bit of blending with my pencil. Have it. There's our tree. Thank you, everyone.